Hello, everybody. This is the December mini consultation session, and today I have Jennifer, a breeder of French Bulldogs, and Nelly, the owner of a Rhodesian Ridgeback, I believe. Um, anyway, so we're going to start with Jennifer, and just before we were getting ready to start this, Jennifer was saying what was motivating her to do the session and to do RMF. So I wanted her to just finish that thought because I interrupted her. So, hi, Jennifer.
Hi, thank you but for this mini consult. I really appreciate your wisdom on the subject, and honestly, I appreciate you taking the time to be so helpful because feeding this way, rotational monofeeding, it's really important to me. Right now, we have nine either young adult or adult French bulldogs, and we have what's left over from two litters of puppies. And right now, everybody is on rotational monofeeding, and we just really we always fed kibble because that's just what you do.
Oh,
Um, and for the most part, our dogs were not unhealthy, but we did have a couple that just had some things going on, and that just kind of led me to do some more research and I did a few things, supplements, what everybody else does, um, tried the veterinarian route, the pharmaceutical route, and things just weren't clicking. And what really spurred me to give this a try was your video on what really is an ear infection. And I watched that video and I realized that the reason why what I had tried up to that point wasn't working was because this was not an ear infection. This was a dog trying to detox. And
right.
so I switched her to rotational monofeeding alone. And she's 4. She'll be 5 in April. And up to that point, she had been kibble fed. And it took about 4 months, but her ears are so much better than they have been for her entire life.
Oh, that's
And I'm really a person that if I try it and it works and I can see that it works, then I am sold. And so um, I think it was about we did that. We started her in February, and then I think it was about July that we ended up switching everybody over, and it was kind of done in stages. But um, I was getting some advice from someone, but that kind of fell through. And then I just kind of felt like, I needed to do something different because I had a few bumps in the road with my current litters. This was our first time trying to do rotational monofeeding with litters.
hmm
Um, and um, so my goal right now is to learn as much as I can about this, to educate myself so that I know what I'm doing with my dogs so that when it is time for us to have another litter, I am prepared and ready. Plus, I obviously want to feed my dogs the best I can. And I understand right now that I'm probably making a few mistakes. And so that's why I'm here.
Well, that's great. It's great to hear that you've had success with what you've done so far. And it's great to have a mentor, but there's nothing better than getting the information in your own head so that
Yeah.
you can make your own decisions. And to do that, you just have to learn some general principles. That's all I did. And then I started applying those and then watching the wild dogs and seeing what the wild dogs do. And whenever people have questions of me, that's the first place I look, like, especially with regard to breeding, because I don't have any information about breeding dogs. I've never done that. And so I look at the wild model. And unfortunately, some of the questions that we have about breeding domestic dogs can't be answered by watching the field, the wolves, because the field researchers are biased and they don't see everything. Like I was just researching bleeding during estrus or pro-estrus in wolves. And they say, oh, yes, wolves bleed. But then when you dig deeper, it says captive wolves. And when you try to pin them down and say, now, does this happen? Does this bleeding occur in wild wolves? They will say, Well, no, but researchers have found bloody urine. Well, there might be a little tiny bit of blood in urine for marking purposes for, male dogs to know what's going on with a female, but that doesn't mean that we have bloodletting like we do in domestic dogs. So I don't know if you've had that experience, but it just shows you a little bit of, the bias that I have to kind of peel through when I look
Right.
out at the wild model, and some information just isn't there. So we have to make some inferences, and we can't really come down on the side of vets because they are extremely biased in the other direction, or, maybe in the same direction actually. But they have their own like agenda, and it doesn't serve us. It serves them, of course.
Right.
So you said that you had some questions, so I'll just let you kind of direct the conversation. Um, and so just fire away when you're ready.
Okay. Well, just a general background. Um, I feed mostly chicken drumsticks that I remove the skin and I chop them up into like usually like 3 to 4 pieces. Um, they get some opportunity to chew bone that way, but I do find that if I leave them whole, there is a greater risk of them choking. And really, when I say choking, it's not a matter of the food going down the wrong pipe. It's they try to swallow a piece that's too big and it presses on to the airway and constricts the airway, and then they panic.
Did you say
Um,
you grind or you cut it up? You cut them up.
I I do grind
Okay.
some for the puppies, mostly, but I do just cut it up, and they do fine with that. Um, but really, aside from a little bit of organ meat that I get from some rabbits that we process here that we raise on the farm, I'm not really getting, I'm not feeding a lot of organ meat aside from I do give freeze-dried chicken livers as treats. So they are getting a small amount of that every day.
Mhm.
I do feed rabbit very rarely, occasionally, and honestly, I didn't really feed much other than that, except for you had made a suggestion to feed Cece some beef heart or some fish
Mhm.
to kind of help with some of her digestive issues. And so I have that now, and I have been giving that to her. But I guess my first question is, how important is the offal? And, do I need to be buying it and making sure that it is a part of every meal, or is what I'm doing okay?
Well, I don't think that the freeze-dried chicken livers are the best source of offal. And when we talk about offal, that includes all of the organs and really all of the parts that humans don't want. Um, but it's not specific enough because apparently, and I'm taking this from the PMR community, and there's really no reason to doubt it because wolves in the wild do eat secreting organs like livers and pancreases and all of that. So, it's probably a good idea just to cover your bases to make sure that they get some raw liver from time to time. And if you're feeding, like you said, I think you said 4 or 5 days of meat per week. If you're doing that, I mean, it's easy enough to rectify. I mean, if you're at all worried about it and it's inexpensive, it's easily accessible, it's in the form that we get it in is looks reasonably healthy. It's not fatty or anything. Most of the livers that I buy at Walmart are very dark and rich looking. So they're beef livers. So I would recommend just having some on hand and including them in the meal. I mean, you kind of have to experiment, not really experiment, but you have to kind of get into your groove as far as you have to buy them frozen, right? It's really hard to find livers that aren't frozen. So you have to and they come in, at least the packages that I buy come in 1 pound, 1 pound increments. So, and you're not going to go through a whole pound. Um, in one feeding or even in one week. So you'll have to thaw it out a little bit, separate it, portion it out, and put it back in the freezer. So,
Well, just remember I have 9 adult dogs, so I might actually go through it in a couple
You might
days.
actually go through a pound
Yeah.
of beef liver in a week. And I think if you did that maybe once a month, I really think you just have to just make sure they have some token secreting organ. I don't think anybody has any truly scientific knowledge about that. So,
Okay. Well, that's good. That's good. Thank you. Um, the next question that I have is about plant days. Um, Plant days really have not been um, a steady part of our rotation. If I had some overripe bananas or extra fruit or something, I might feed it. But for the most part, they're getting meat. Um, Save Cece again. She was my cream female that had the impacted colon, and she does have a narrow colon, and the vet did suspect maybe a stricture. So I have been adding quite a bit of fruit into her diet, but otherwise, for the most part, the other dogs aren't getting them. So I guess as far as the RMF take on it, when um, and why should I add plant days?
well, plants are not necessary at all.
Okay.
Um, what they are useful for in RMF is for people who don't want their dogs to ever go a day without food. And that's why
Okay.
I started including fruit and a few other plant foods in RMF because the way I was feeding my dog was pretty much 2 or 3 times a week he would get a meat meal. And while I was developing RMF, he was in his mid to late teens, so he just didn't need very much food. And I found that I had to incorporate mostly fasting days. I mean, he had more fasting days than he had eating days. And so I thought, God, and it just worked so well. He was never sick, he was never symptomatic, lived to be 19. And when I applied it to my family's dogs, my parents' dog, my sister's dog. They did the same thing, no symptoms ever, no vet visits ever, diseases reversed, all of that. And so I thought, this works so great, but nobody's going to do it. Nobody's going to do it because nobody wants their dog to go a whole day without food. So I thought, what can we do? You can't, if the PMR model worked, then it would have worked for me when my dog was on it for, however long, 9 years or whatever. And it didn't work. So I knew that dogs shouldn't be eating meat every day, especially not agricultural meat, unless they're extremely active, unless they're like sled dogs in Alaska or something.
Right.
And so I had to find some way of displacing all of that very dense fuel that dogs get when they're fed meat every day. So that's the overlying philosophy. And beyond that, it's really up to every owner to determine when they want to incorporate plant food days and how many. Because, usually it's because they don't want to fast their dog or they are motivated to not buy as much meat or like you have a situation with Cece, I think you said, where
Yep.
she has a problem and she gets impacted, and in which case plant fiber could really help the situation with her. Um, so it's just so individual. It's just an option. For me, I feed plant foods, but I guess just to appease my dog. It's probably pretty much emotional on my part to feed her plant food days, and I might completely stop someday. I didn't actually stop completely feeding plant food days to my elderly dog that I had before I did feed him plant food days, but they were rare. Most of his days were fasting days or meat days.
Hmm.
So it's just totally up to you. I think there's a threshold, like, we recently heard about somebody who's been feeding their dog. 6 days of plant foods to 1 day of meat. And after 6 years of doing that, the dog's developing some problems. I don't think they're as, I don't think the problems are as, desperate as the vet made it out to be, because it's just swollen lymph nodes. That's all. That's the only symptom the dog has, and lowered energy. But she's 15 years old.
Yeah.
So, we can infer maybe from that 6 days is too much, but
Yeah.
there's vegan dogs that are thriving out there. So I can't even completely condemn that. So
Okay.
anyway, does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. I, we did fasting days even when the dogs were on kibble. And it was just like always Sunday was always a fasting day. And with having the number of dogs that I have, sometimes it's just a reprieve. It's just like a break. You know, it's
Legitimate.
like a break
Yeah.
for all of us.
Uh-huh.
And we fast ourselves. Like when I start feeling poor, that's the first thing I do is I'm like, I'm fasting today. You
Yeah.
know, because I know the benefits, how it affects me. And I've also done a few extended fasts with my dogs this year and have reversed illnesses and healed issues. And so like I fully believe in it. So that was kind of more of you kind of answered my question there that is it more of a nutritional type thing where they need the fruit, or is it more of a more fluid thing like what you're talking about, that really fasting is the same, a fasting day is the same.
I don't think it's
uh,
a nutritional thing at all. And my evidence is that there are wolves out there in nature that just don't get the opportunity to eat very many plant foods.
right.
The timber wolves are every bit as healthy as the California wolves that do have access to fruit. So I don't think
Yeah.
anybody can make the claim that, and the carnivores love to hear this, that, dogs don't need carbs. Well, they don't need carbs, but they can serve an important role in the diets of dogs. So anyway, yeah, it's not necessary. It's an option, and there's nothing wrong with it. And it helps to displace all those rich foods that dogs would otherwise get.
Yeah. Okay, good. um I did want to give you an update on Cece, by the way. She's doing fine.
Great.
Her weight is the same, but her energy is great.
Oh, good.
um and she still has very firm stools, but they are smaller. So I think that what I'm doing is working. And basically, what I've been doing is I've been giving her, and this might be wrong, but I have been giving her a plant meal at like 8 in the morning, and then like 6 or 7 at night. Then I'm giving her a meat meal, and I don't do that every day. I've been putting in a couple days where it's just fruit in the morning and fruit at night. And then I still have been fasting her on Sunday. So if I wanted to, and I'm doing like 8 ounces in the morning and 8 ounces in the evening. And I did work up to that. I started out like 4 and 4, and then 6 and 6, and then I worked up to 8 and 8. And I'm just gonna kind of give that to her for a while and just see if she does kind of fill out a little bit. But and I may just end up doing it to where every day is fruit in the morning and then meat in the evening. But would you have any suggestions on changing that? Really, I don't have any concerns with anything except for to me, she's just painfully skinny.
Oh, okay. So I was waiting for that. I was waiting to hear about her weight. Um, I don't think there's anything wrong with feeding fruit in the morning and then feeding a meat meal later on in the day. And in her situation with the possible constriction or whatever you call it in her anatomy,
Hmm.
rectal anatomy or whatever, she it might benefit from that kind of a rotation. I think it just takes a few hours for plant food meals to work their way through a dog's body. So
Hmm.
really the issue with combining is that they end up in the same place where the digestive chemicals come in and The body has to figure out how to process carbs at the same time that it's processing protein, and that requires conflicting, digestive fluids. So as long as that's not going to be happening, it's fine. The only caveat to that is that if a dog is having ear issues or skin itching, whatever, those kinds of, yeast issues, feeding fruits and meats in the same day could exacerbate that.
Okay.
So that's just one thing you'd want to be on the lookout for.
Okay.
Um, I think it's fine. I do think you might be feeding the last meal a little late. And, Frenchies aren't among the dogs that are said to be susceptible to bloat, but I still like to favor feeding early enough in the afternoon or evening so that you're awake during the first few hours of digestion. Because if bloat's going to happen because of a meal that was a little too big or too much exercise before or after the meal or whatever causes bloat, if it's going to happen, it seems like it does usually happen in the first few hours after mealtime. So anyway, I just
Okay.
want to be conservative about the about dinner time.
Okay. Do you think the amounts I'm giving her are okay?
You said 3% and then you were working up to four, or no, you started with four and then you were moving up to five
Yeah.
and six.
Yeah, she's getting 8 ounces of plant in the morning and then like 8 ounces of meat in the evening. So
That's
I
a
mean that's
ton of food for a
yeah.
dog that's probably 15 pounds, 15 or 20 pounds.
Yeah,
Um,
she's I would say that and and I've always been cognizant of what a healthy weight looks like on a dog. Our dogs, even when they were on kibble, were never overweight.
mhm.
Um, they've always had a waist, you could always feel ribs but not see ribs. Um,
Can you see
but
her
even
ribs?
oh yes.
You
Yeah,
can.
she still looks like the pictures that I sent you
Oh,
on that
okay.
Facebook post.
Okay.
So I would say that she's probably still about 19 pounds, but honestly, I think that 21 is like her what I would say is a good weight for her. Um, so yeah, she's definitely getting fed more than 3%. But you know, I'm still trying to figure that part out about rotational monofeeding. I still think I feed too
Yeah.
much, but I cannot get used to that. Like there's got to be something that I'm missing. I feel um I just got to get there. I don't know. I guess it might just be take more time.
I don't think you're missing anything. I think everybody feels that way. I feel that way. I don't know how much to feed my dog. I have no idea. I never measure my dog's food. I completely eyeball it. I have no idea what the percentages are that I feed her every day, but I just kind of eyeball it, see how it works, see if she's, itching, if her ears are itching. And, I do watch her weight a little bit, I suppose, but it never seems to change. I mean, after I fast her for a few days, she does get a little skinnier, but I haven't had the need to fast her in quite some time. So quantity it's just so unknown. And I think as long as you're staying in that 3 to 10%, I think that it's perfectly fine. Some people claim that small dogs need closer to 10%.
Okay,
So you've
good.
got you've got quite a lot of wiggle room there, and there's nobody out there that's going to tell you don't feed a small dog, 9 or 10% of their body weight.
Yeah,
Uh, Nobody's going to tell you that, and no, because nobody knows. We can't take what we see in the wild and extrapolate it directly. So if we don't have that to rely on, what do we have? We don't really have anything except these authors of dog feeding books that will give you a recipe. And if they're telling you a recipe, then they can tell you how much of those specific foods to feed your dog for a given weight or a given age or activity level or whatever. But I can't do that because I'm not giving you recipes. I'm only
right.
giving you the range of foods. And I don't want to give anybody recipes because that's going to lock you in. It's going to require you to stick to this recipe even when you see something in the dog that makes it necessary for you to be flexible.
Yes. So indications that I'm overfeeding would be the detox symptoms, basically.
Yeah, like, if you see scooting, if you see vomiting, obviously, ear problems, itchiness.
Yeah.
My dog tends to scratch her coat more, scratch her skin more when I do, have too many feeding days in a row. And I did that recently because I was at one place, I was traveling and I was at one place where I had a kitchen and I wanted to get a few meals made up in advance. So I went ahead and made the meals and my dog was so bored. She's like in the back of the van the whole time, by
Mm,
herself. And so I indulged in a little bit of emotional feeding and fed her every day for 3 days in a row. So it's not something that normally happens, but when it does, she gets a little itchy, then I have a fasting day or a day when I just give her my apple cores. We have a lot of those days, and she loves it. She loves my apple cores.
okay.
I know. I could
Okay,
probably get
good.
arrested for that, right? Oh, she only feeds the dogs apple cores.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. That's another thing too, is just when you start learning about this stuff and then you talk to people who are like, "Oh my gosh, you're feeding your French bulldog puppies chicken drumsticks. You're so awful." And I'm like, "No, you have no idea."
They're so out of touch. They're so out of touch.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
we could probably be accused of being out of touch too because we don't know the science behind PMR, right?
Yeah.
The exact measurements and the balancing and the all the nutrients that are contained in the foods and all of that. Well, I think there's a better way to do things.
Yeah. This honestly works for me. It's time consuming, especially when I have puppies. But like I said, I just want to learn as much as I can, and I want to be okay with what I'm doing, and I want to have a confidence in what I'm doing because that's where the success is going to happen, and that's where I'm going to stay motivated to keep doing it.
Well, I think
Um,
you will. I think you will be really confident about this in a couple years, but it's going to take, I think, a few litters or, experimenting with your own dogs. And that's what I found. I mean, just the more experience that I had feeding different dogs and seeing different conditions heal and um, it just builds your confidence and, you're not going back. You're just not going back
right.
her. You're,
Yeah.
it's just so it becomes so obvious and second nature. You wouldn't do things any other way. I wouldn't do things any other way. I couldn't imagine, feeding my dog something off of a shelf and I can just feed her real food. Why not?
Yeah.
The only thing that, the thing that pe keeps people from doing that is this fear that they're missing something or that their dog's going to be deficient in something or another. And it's ridiculous
Hmm.
because as long as they're eating the same kinds of foods that they eat in the wild, they'll be fine.
Yeah.
Like I said, we have to cover our bases and okay, so feed some secreting organs now and then. I mean, my dog gets quail now and then, and there are lots of smaller secreting organs in quail. So, yeah, just, cover your bases. Dogs are much more resilient than people give them credit for.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Um, well, I know my time is probably getting coming to a close here. One quick question about fasting puppies. I
Hmm.
know that I shouldn't fast puppies, but I do um, I do want to talk about that because I'm sure that there is a reason to fast a puppy, especially if there were diarrhea or something like that. My puppies are really voracious eaters, but I did have in this litter, I had a situation where a puppy just was lethargic and he just did not want to eat food. He fasted himself for about a day.
Oh,
Um, and then after that, he was okay. And then he just ate normally again. But because they're so small, and because I am feeding them 3 times a day, if they miss 3 meals, that really does have an effect on their weight. So I just wanted to know if any more information you might have on fasting puppies.
Well, I'm not like I say so much. I'm not an expert in fasting puppies, so I have to defer to to some of the general knowledge out there about fasting puppies. But I have to also contrast what we hear, all the fear mongering that we hear about fasting puppies, with what pups experience in the wild. And I know that puppies that don't get fed sufficiently in the wild just die. They just die. I think they die fairly quickly when mom doesn't come home or
Mm-hmm.
mom doesn't have enough food. I think they die fairly quickly if they're young, if they're like, between 5 and 7 weeks of age, or
Mm-hmm.
even, or younger. Um, but if I don't see any real need to impose a fast on a healthy puppy. By the time, you know, you're sending your puppies home 9, 10 weeks, whatever, um, if you haven't seen anything like digestive upset or diarrhea or a puppy that won't eat, there's no reason to not feed them every day,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Yeah.
Um, so if there's a problem and it seems to be digestive, fasting will clear it up and usually fairly quickly in a puppy. So I don't think there's anything wrong with fasting a symptomatic puppy for a
Yeah.
day. And if the problem continues beyond a day, then that's a puppy that's probably not going to survive.
Mm-hmm.
No.
Yeah. Um,
And it's not because of some germ or something.
right.
Some puppies just don't make it. You know, you probably know
Yeah.
that as a breeder.
Yes. Well, I had asked about this earlier, and one thing that you recommended was feeding the chicken necks, and that really did help. And that helped me to understand that um, I think what I was doing wrong was I was still grinding so that they were getting the whole drumstick, but I was giving one meal a day where I was just giving them the whole drumstick and they were eating most of the meat. They weren't eating all the bone during that meal. And I think what happened was is that they just got to a point where they just weren't getting enough of that bone. And then I did wonder, and you answered this on the Q&A recording about the coccidia and the giardia.
Hmm.
I know that dogs, healthy adult dogs are asymptomatic if they carry that,
Hmm.
but with puppies, um, they can be symptomatic if they do carry it because they will usually have diarrhea. Now, before, the old way of doing it, we would have given them a medicine that would have cleared that out. And usually, given that medicine 3 to 5 days would completely resolve the issue. Um, so, this is where I have to kind of figure out is this something that can be addressed with rotational monofeeding? And it might just be that giving the higher bone content moves that stuff out to where um, it's not causing the diarrhea anymore. Um,
Well,
I mean, what do you think?
is it possible that they had runny stools because they weren't getting sufficient bone matter? Is that what you're saying?
Um, could be. Um, there's a smell. There's a smell to the feces that it smells very off, usually whenever they have giardia. So having a loose stool that smells normal is different than having a loose stool because they have giardia. Um, so so that was one thing I did with this litter because up to this point, again, what people normally do is at 2 and 4 and 6 weeks and probably 8 weeks, you're deworming this puppy with something. And so with these litters that I weaned onto raw, um, the weaning the weaning part, weaning from mother to raw, actually went very well. Usually that is a diarrhea situation. And usually you're giving probiotics and you're giving pumpkin and you're giving all these things. I didn't do that this time, and they weaned off famously. I didn't deworm them at 2 weeks. I didn't deworm them at 4 weeks, but by about 5 to 6 weeks, they were having that Giardia poop. Um, I did. Go ahead.
How do you correlate the the runny poops with Giardia? Do you test them?
Yeah, you can test them. They'll have signs of Giardia, um, and so then the vet would say, "Well, here, give this medicine." Then
But do you test your puppies when they have runny stools so that you can correlate it either to Giardia or not Giardia?
I have in the past, yes, and like I said, there's a smell, like there's a you can tell, and so that has been kind of the what what we've done and has fixed itself in the past.
Well, before I gave any remedy for Giardia, regardless of the smell of the poop, to a puppy, I would increase the bone matter and
Okay.
just see if that stops it. I would
Yeah.
even fast a dog before I would give whatever it is that you're giving them to treat them for Giardia, because you can't kill a parasite without doing harm to the other, the other areas of the body, like living cells.
Yes.
You have to put stuff in a dog that doesn't belong in a dog in order to kill a parasite. And I can't sanction that when there are other solutions that would work without the harm.
What about instead of fasting, what about like giving sweet potato for a day or two?
There's nothing wrong with that. Absolutely
Think,
nothing wrong with
yeah,
that. Yeah, you bet. Yeah.
yeah. Because I
And
know we
if
don't
if
have to
there
give.
is a parasite, it might be that the puppy's being overfed for it's their capacities being exceeded.
Yeah, can you explain that? How would that be?
Because, the theory that I have around parasites is they don't come around unless there's waste to be eaten. When the dog's not making use of all the fuel, then it has to be eaten by somebody else. And that's what these organisms are intended for. They're the cleanup crew. They're the organisms that come around when there is waste to be eaten. So, and I know that the medical and veterinary fraternity loves to tell us that they just come around indiscriminately, but that's just not true, because no species, no matter how small, chooses to live someplace where their food supply isn't. They just go someplace arbitrarily, just because of exposure. Oh, well, here's a dog, we'll jump on this dog, even though our food supply might not be there. It doesn't work. It's not that simple. It doesn't work that way.
Hmm.
Um, Nature's much more complex than that and much more symbiotic than that. It looks after itself. So if that what I'm saying is, if the parasite is there, then the cause is there too. And a day of fasting or even a day of sweet potato, like you're suggesting, or even maybe something like bananas, I don't know, would solve the problem without the bad parts.
No, that makes a lot of sense, honestly. And I would say overfeeding might be something that I have to really work on myself. Um,
Absolutely. You have to feel around, and because, like, nobody's going to tell you how much to feed a litter of puppies.
right.
So you could easily be overfeeding, but it's
Yeah.
not a crime. You didn't know, it's not intentional, and
Yeah.
you just, live and learn.
Yeah. Okay. Well, like I said, thank you so much. I think that that covers all of my questions for today. And like I said, I just appreciate all your help and helping me through this process, because I really do see the benefit. I'm really excited about it. I just want to get to a point where I have this confidence that I'm like, okay, I see this, now I know what to do. Um, you know,
And your situation is kind of, it's unusual. And it's going to take more experimentation because, every litter is different, every set of parents is different. So,
Yes.
they're still dogs, but things change, and you're going to have situations that will, challenge you. But you're going to be a pro, I can tell, because you
Oh,
have the
well,
right
thank you.
attitude.
Yeah. Well, and I also can come to you and
Yeah,
just
sure.
kind of get some support too. I mean, that means a lot.
Hopefully, I'll always be around.
Hmm. Well, thank you so much again. I appreciate it.
All right, you're
I'll
welcome.
mute I'll
Jennifer.
mute myself so that I can continue.
Okay, sounds good. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
All right. Hi, Nelly.
Hi, Nora.
Okay, so you have a, Rhodesian Ridgeback, and I have your notes here on my other monitor. Let me just get them up here. Okay, you are in Eastern Canada, and your Rhodey is 9 years old.
Hmm.
A female named
Mila.
Mila. And your main problem with Mila, she's been on RMF for
I think it's been about three years.
oh,
And
2 years.
before that, I fed her home cooked meals for about 1 year. Uh,
Okay.
yeah.
And before that, she had allergy issues, and you were
Yeah.
at the vet
Since
all
yeah,
the
since she was a
time.
puppy. Exactly. Always
Lots
was
of
always at the vets, sadly,
right. And
unfortunately.
then, what were her symptoms in 2021 when you ended up in an ER?
Yeah, she couldn't get out. She couldn't get up from her bed. Her
Oh,
legs were filled with were swollen. She
mhm.
was retaining fluid in her body, so her legs were swollen, her face, everything was swollen. Her ears were swollen and bleeding, and um, she had open sores everywhere. It was, yeah, really dramatic. But of course, the worst thing was she could no longer walk.
And they diagnosed that not being able to walk as nephritis.
Yeah, they said Lyme nephritis. So yeah,
So
kidney.
nephritis that's caused by Lyme? Is that the idea?
Yes, yeah, that was their idea was that her kidneys were failing due to a tick bite. And it's interesting because when I pushed for, to understand how they came to that diagnosis, the answer was it was obvious that it wasn't quite clear. It was by deduction. So it was just
Okay.
interesting that they would give this diagnosis with such certainty, but when you push to understand, it was not really that clear. It was their best guess.
Right, right.
Yeah.
So, had there been a tick bite? Did you share that with them?
No, I mean, no.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, at least they didn't go, wait a minute, she was bitten by a tick 6 months ago. That's obviously the cause, like they sometimes do.
Mhm.
So, that was 4 years ago.
Yeah.
She was how severe was her kidney disease at
Well,
that
they
time?
said that she had probably 6 months to live, maybe a year. And so they sent me home. At that point, she was on this very expensive hydrolyzed protein from the vet.
Mm-hmm.
Because over the years they had said she has allergies and she needs to try different kinds of kibble, and so we had reached like the last potential working kibble, which was this hydrolyzed protein, and these prescribed 4 medications to
Yeah.
manage her symptoms. And so I went home that day with the prescription, and I felt very defeated at first. And then I decided that, um, yeah, that this could not be. Like she was 6 years old. There was no reason why my 6-year-old dog was dying, and I couldn't understand how that could be possible. So I went online. Oh yeah, so the other symptom she had was neurological. Her skin quivered. You would touch her and her whole skin would twitch.
I've seen
So I
dogs
went
do that.
online and I researched the symptoms and hours. I think I must have been up till 4 a.m. researching things online, and I came to the conclusion that it was a combination of kibble that was making her sick and the vaccines and the tick medication, which in the province that we lived in, they were recommending basically all year long. And
Mm.
so I just think, so following this crisis that she had, um, I had sent her to, what do you call it? She had, when you stay, the dog stays overnight in a place. I can't
A
remember.
boarding situation.
Sorry,
Uh-huh.
boarding, yeah. And to be able to place her there, she had to be up to date. So
Oh, yeah.
I the day before I dropped her off, she got all the shots and the tick medication all in
Mm.
at once. And then she was in a stressful situation. I think I had also switched her to new kibble at that time. So it was like the whole deal. And when I picked her up again, like within a day, we were in the emergency. So I'm glad it didn't happen when she
Oh.
was, yeah, yeah.
And what was the problem that time? Or was that the situation? That was the
That
same
was the
situation?
situation. That was it. That was it exactly.
I
So in
see. Okay.
hindsight, when I finally came to RMF and I read your all the and I just understood what causes illness, I just thought, oh my gosh, she had just taken all these toxins, and that
Why
just
wouldn't her
blew
kidneys
me out.
fail, right?
Yeah,
Of
yeah,
course her kidneys are going to fail with
yeah,
all of that burden
yeah,
all at once.
yeah. I know. Yeah. So then after that, I started feeding her home cooked meals, which was extremely time consuming because I was following complex recipes. And I was almost going to throw in the towel and go back to kibble. That's how discouraged I was from this whole cooking experience. And then at the dog park, I ran into someone who had two dogs. I had met him before, and one of his dogs had just died following a tick medication consumption. And he mentioned Bravecto. And I was so horrified. I went home straight to the computer and I researched Bravecto killed my dog. And it
Good
led
for
me to
you.
you. As someone in the I just couldn't believe it. Anyway, in whatever, maybe on Reddit, someone said, go check out Nora Lentz. And that's how I came
Oh,
to you.
wow, that's
And then
cool.
so it has been such a revelation. And so now here we are 3 years later. She is in perfect health. I'm so laid back about how I feed her. It's so much fun because I don't overthink. At the beginning, I was measuring and weighing, but now I kind of eyeball it, and
Yeah.
sometimes I'm out of food or whatever. And so, yeah, it's very
That's the
uncomplicated.
freedom. That's the
It,
freedom. That's the flexibility that people
Mhm.
don't realize they have. It's so
Yeah,
liberating.
yeah,
You can
I
let
know.
that's exactly what I intended when I first started. I said, some days I don't feed my dog because I don't happen to have any food in the house, or I
Hmm.
don't have time to go to the store, or
Yeah,
I'm not feeling very good, or,
yeah,
whatever.
yeah,
And that's totally okay.
yeah,
Sometimes I feed plant 2 meat days in a row because I don't have any fruit in the house, whatever. That's
yeah.
fine too. I mean, it's just so liberating, and the
Yes,
dogs don't suffer for it. They actually are better for it,
yeah,
for the randomness.
yeah,
Even you don't know what you're going to feed your dog the next day.
yeah.
I
I
don't
know
know
it's
what I'm going to feed
incredible.
my dog tomorrow. What?
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, it's incredible. It really is. And we just moved from one province to another, and I was on the road for 2 days, and I fasted her, and it was just so convenient, and she didn't
Yes.
mind. Yeah. And it's funny because I met a friend just a few days ago, and she hadn't seen my dog in a long time. And I told her that I was feeding her raw meat. And she said, oh, that is so dangerous. And I said to her,
No.
well, she's been eating it for 3 years. And she looked at my dog and she said, actually, your dog looks better
Of
than she
course she
did,
does.
like 7 years ago when she was actually really a puppy. So that was a big compliment.
Yeah. Wow, that's great.
Yeah.
Well, super. So, are you having any problems right now?
Yeah, well, so she has I don't know if yes, I think I mentioned it. She leaks urine, but it's very random. There's no pattern. I can't figure out why she does that, and I'm not too concerned. I just figure I think you might have said that when puppies are spayed too young, um, or sometimes it's linked to being spayed. I don't know, but
Mm-hmm.
I think I might have had a conversation with you on Facebook, and I just gathered from that there was nothing you could do about it. I'm not going to worry about it.
Well, the vets do give a drug to stop it from happening, and they just intend for dogs to be on it their whole lives. But if your dog is afflicted with spay incontinence, I think it usually presents earlier in life. It's not something that crops up later in life. So this
Okay.
sounds more to me like just a bladder that's wearing out, and that happens. I mean, I had to put a belly band on my dog probably about the last year of his life when he was 18 years old. So I think it just
Okay.
happens with old age
Yeah.
sometimes, unless you can notice a pattern and trace it back to a specific type of food or possibly overfeeding. I mean, I look at Mila and she's definitely not underweight, so it's quite possible that you're overfeeding, and a little more fasting in the rotation would solve that leaking problem
Yeah.
forever, or at least dial it back to something that only occurs when you feed a big meal or something. Have you
Yeah.
noticed a pattern with it?
Well, you know what? The closest are the, I have noticed that it happens more often after fruit days. And I remember you once telling me, like, maybe don't feed watery fruits. And I think I was giving her papaya and melon at the time. So I tend to give her just bananas or sweet potatoes. And just the last time I gave her sweet potatoes, she leaked urine again. So I thought, oh, maybe it's the water content in sweet potatoes. So,
Well, it might be, but also, if you're having any problem at all, I think that it's probably a good idea to get the cooked foods out, because you do turn the starches into a more bioavailable form, I think, when you cook starchy
mhm,
foods for dogs. But the flip side of that is that some nutrients are killed, and if they're not usable by the body, then they're going to have to be eliminated, and that increases the elimination burden.
mhm,
And the kidneys and the whole urinary tract bears some of that burden. So
mhm,
I think getting rid of sweet potatoes might be something that I would do.
mhm.
And you might want to replace them with something like avocados, and maybe avocados and cucumbers, which I think make a really good combination. Um, the only thing with avocados and a big dog is they're pricey. I mean, I bought a ton of avocados when I was in California, just this last week, because they're so cheap there.
Yeah.
Um, but so if you can find a cheap source, Costco sells them like in bags for $10 or something like that. So,
Mhm,
it may not be doable because they do get
mhm.
kind of expensive, and it's, quite a contrast to bananas that are extremely cheap.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, and sweet potatoes and yams are also pretty cheap
Mhm.
compared to avocados. So that might be something that you would try, but I would definitely try that and see if it helps with the leakage. When do you
Mhm.
notice it, like in her bed or where she's been laying?
Where
Is that
she's
how you
been
know it?
laying, yeah, yeah. Sometimes just little drops, but sometimes she'll be lying in a puddle of urine. So it's sometimes quite
Oh, really?
dramatic. Yeah,
Really?
yeah.
I would probably, if it was that pronounced, I would keep like a little diary, or just make some notes every day of how much leakage you see, so that you can trace
Mhm.
it back to
Yeah,
whatever foods that she might have eaten that day. And then you
yeah,
can make refinements.
absolutely. I should have done that a long time ago. Yeah, we have diapers on hand for these days, but yeah, I'll keep a diary and figure that out. Hmm.
Okay. Yeah, just, write a couple sentences every day, every
Yeah,
evening. No leakage.
mhm.
I fed her this, that, the
Yeah,
other, or she leaked at 3 p.m. and I fed her at 2, or, whatever.
yeah, yeah. I'm amazed at what bladder capacity dogs have. Sometimes if I open the door and it's too cold outside, she'll just flat out refuse to go outside. And so she'll have peed in the late afternoon or early evening, and she can hold it till the next afternoon if she doesn't want to go out in the cold. So I sometimes wonder, is that good for the bladder? To
Dogs are amazing. I'm so envious because I
I
sure couldn't
know.
go a day without going to the bathroom. And I've noticed even my dog, I mean, I go to bed really early. I go to bed like at 8:30 or 9. And sometimes I don't let her out until 8 o'clock the next morning. And
Mhm.
she's fine. And
Yeah,
then when it's cold outside, she doesn't like going out there either. And she has to walk about 20 or 30 feet to get to the backyard. So she'll go out just right around the corner and wait till I leave and then come back. I've watched her do this and then come back and pretend like she's gone to the bathroom. So I have to go out there and go, you go to the bathroom
Oh,
and make her go. Otherwise, I mean, I really think that, she could go a whole day. It almost seems like urinating is more of a marking thing than a necessity, than a, elimination thing for
yeah,
dogs because they can go such long periods
I
without
know.
peeing. But what
That's
a contrast to from that to, leakage. That doesn't make any sense.
yeah, I know, I know. So I'll do that. I'll for sure. I'll keep a diary to
Okay.
zoom in on what that could be. Yeah.
Okay.
And apart from that, so she has, two lipo, what are, I don't, those fat
Lipomas.
deposits.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And so I'm not doing anything with that. My husband thinks they're very unesthetic, but you sent me an article that you wrote, and I don't want to subject her to a surgery, so that's fine. And then the other thing that I wrote was I've noticed just in the last year that she has these moles popping up on her body. So I'll see her fur start being displaced, and then there's this big mole emerging. And I don't know, I mean, I'm not concerned, but
I think that is, I mean, anything that the body can't make use of, it's gonna push out. And I think that's, since we're feeding as high quality as we can, we're already feeding the foods, the best foods we can get our hands on, right?
yeah.
And we're kind of disadvantaged in that regard. But
Mhm.
I think when we see that happening in older dogs, it's a sign that their elimination capacity is decreasing.
Mhm.
And at the
Okay.
same time that they're not able to use as much fuel.
Mhm.
So they're not using the fuel, so that's more that needs to be eliminated, and their
Mhm.
capacity for elimination is coming down. So you
Mhm.
have um, you have something going on there that could cause wastes to be deposited
Mhm.
elsewhere in the body. And if you go to the vet with those little nodules and lumps and bumps, the vets will just say, "Oh, just happens, it's just an old age thing." And because I remember taking my old Cocker Spaniel when she had these nodules all over her
Mhm.
body, like wart type things.
Mhm.
And the vet just said, "Oh, they're old age nodules. That's what they call
Mhm.
them." So
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
think so. I think it's
Yeah.
that combination of lowered fuel
Yeah.
expenditure and the fuel coming in stays at the same level, which means and the elimination isn't as good as it is when a dog
Mhm.
is younger. So all those factors combined
Mhm.
means stuff has to go somewhere.
Yeah.
And so I think if you wanted to do anything about that, I think decreasing food would be,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
decreasing
Yeah.
meat, probably decreasing meat, maybe adding another plant food day to the
Yeah.
rotation or adding a fasting day to the rotation. You
Yeah.
really can't expect to get rid of lipomas. I mean, some
Mhm.
people do see them disappear in a young dog when they switch to RMF, but I
Mhm.
don't think in an older dog that
Mhm.
has already been on RMF for 3 years, I don't think you have much hope of getting rid of it.
Mhm.
Unless, you might get rid of it if you did a 30-day fast. Who knows? You could
Yeah.
probably do that. But that's extreme. You don't need to do that. It's like
Mhm.
your husband said, it's mostly aesthetics, right? It's not
Mhm.
causing any problems. Uh,
Mhm.
so
I can
just
definitely fast her more often. Yeah.
yeah, just, with all of that in mind, just less food and,
Mhm.
she's probably getting as much exercise as you can give her already. So
Yeah.
you really just have to talk, you can't talk about it from the expenditure side. You have to talk about it from the consumption side.
Mhm.
And that's probably what the underlying cause
Mhm.
is.
Okay. Okay. And I just remembered one of the reasons why we set up I'm here today was because of her tooth. I had posted a photo of her tooth,
Uh-huh.
and as I said in my email, she's not at all bothered by it. It just looks gross. And I was very relieved when you suggested that it might be broken because then I compared it to the other side, and I do think I see a piece missing.
Hmm.
So if it's just a broken tooth, what what is the natural progression in what happens with a broken tooth? And when it looks like that, does it do anything?
Well, I'm sure that varies, situationally, but if you talk if you want to know about the progression of how things go when that happens, it's going to depend on who you talk to, because if you talk to any vet, they're going to say, oh, well, it's going to get infected and it's possibly going to spread, this infection is going to spread throughout your dog's body. There's that risk. So if
Mhm.
you try to Google this question, and you might have done that already, if you try to Google this question, you will get, oh, yes, your dog must see a vet right away, because if it's not attended to, if the tooth isn't pulled or whatever, um, then infection will set in. Well, I don't think infection is a given at all. I think it's ridiculous to assume that.
Mhm.
And we have the wild model on this particular topic to rely on, because wolves break their teeth all the time out there in the wild, and no wolf, I would venture to say, has ever died from an infection in a broken tooth.
Mhm.
My dog has two broken teeth. My cat has a broken canine that has been broken since he was 9 weeks of age. It's never bothered him. I have no idea how it got broken.
Mhm.
Um, but I am of the conviction that unless it is causing the dog some kind of visible discomfort, that you should just leave it be. Just leave it
Yeah,
be.
yeah. I smelt it. Smells fine.
That's a good sign too. My the part of the tooth that I can see on my cat is not discolored like Mila's is.
Mhm.
So I don't know what that's about. It could be that, the part of the tooth that keeps the tooth looking viable, looking it's colored the way it's supposed to be, was
Mhm.
destroyed with whatever happened to your dog, and that's why it's discolored. I have no idea.
Mhm.
But I just know that I think it's conservative to leave it be, and I think it's risky to present to a vet, because the
Yeah.
vet's going to yank it out, whether it needs to be yanked out or not.
Mhm.
Nobody yanks out the teeth of wolves when they break,
Yeah.
and you can look in the mouth of any wolf and you're going to see broken teeth, because
Mhm.
their teeth take a beating.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you very much. I had come to that conclusion.
Okay,
Thank you very much
super.
for
Great,
confirming. Yeah.
great. Okay.
Wonderful.
All
Yeah.
right. Anything else? My dog is standing at the door. She needs to
Yeah.
go out. Apparently, I made her pee
Mhm.
before we started this call, and now suddenly she has to pee, and it's only been an hour and 10 minutes.
Mhm.
Go figure that.
Yeah.
But
I
I
want to
think she's
add
good.
one thing.
Yeah.
When I went back I foolishly went back to the vet after the diagnosis and the four medications that the dog was on, and she was going to live 6 months, maybe a year. And so I went back a few weeks later, and my dog was looking so much better. Anyway, the vet was not interested whatsoever in what I had done, and that was so disappointing. And it just breaks my heart to see just to know what's going on behind all those vet doors. So.
Exactly. Did you give the pharmaceuticals?
No, you know what? I think I gave them, no, because I researched them and I saw that they were hard on the kidneys. And there
Yes.
were two,
Yes.
in those four medications, there were two that were counterindicated for patients with kidney issues. So I didn't give them to her.
And the vet probably assumed that you did. And if there was anything that he was going to credit for the improvement that he saw in the
Yeah,
dog, it was going to be that.
yeah, yeah,
That's how strong the brainwashing is that they get in their training. It's,
yeah,
their lives depend on it. Their
mm,
livelihoods depend on it.
yeah,
So, and they take it very personally. All of it becomes part of them. It's
yeah,
part of their identity. They're not going to give it up.
hmm,
So it's a very rare vet that ever asks, what are you doing? I want to learn from that.
hmm,
That's the
yeah,
kind of vet you want to get your hands on, but they're
mhm,
extremely rare, unfortunately.
mm, yeah.
So,
Well, thank you.
oh, thank you. Then thank you too, Jennifer. Thank you guys for doing this today. I think this will be really helpful for anybody watching. So
Yeah.
anyway, you guys have a good evening and a good Thanksgiving if you celebrate Thanksgiving. Are we gonna see each other before Thanksgiving. What's the date today? No, it's next. No, it's this week. Holy cow, it's this week, right? Next week. Okay. All right. So, take care, you guys, and let me know if you have any follow-up questions. You're both in the group, so you can post on the group if you need further help as you're implementing the information. So, all right. I
Thank you
guess
Thank
very
we'll
you
much.
so
start.
much.
All
Yeah.
right. Bye,
Thank you,
guys.
Jennifer.
Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.